The twin suns were setting over the red desert when Eli Cross finished his last repair of the day. He wiped sweat from his face, his hands covered in grease and dust. The old mining drone he'd fixed gave a faint beep, then went quiet again. Everything around him was silent, too silent. For months, Eli had lived alone on this forgotten colony outpost at the edge of the Orion Belt. Once, humans mined this world for rare metals, but now only he remained, keeping the machines alive for trade ships that rarely came. The nights were long, cold, and lonely. He had almost forgotten how to talk to anyone. As the orange light faded, his scanner blinked, a faint blue pulse on the display. He frowned. "That's not normal," he muttered. The signal came from beyond the ridge near the dead forest of glass trees. No drone should be out there. He grabbed his torch and rifle and began walking toward the pulse. The wind howled softly, carrying fine red dust across the dunes. The silence made his boots sound too loud, too human, like he didn't belong in this place anymore. Then he saw it, a soft blue shimmer behind a pile of broken metal. It looked like someone had dropped a piece of the sky. Eli stepped closer, his heart beating faster. A figure moved. He froze. Out of the shadows stepped a young alien woman, her skin pale silver with faint glowing veins, like light moving under her flesh. Her large, bright eyes reflected his torchlight. She wore torn clothes and had a glowing mark on her wrist that pulsed in time with his scanner. She looked scared, no, terrified. Before he could speak, she whispered, "Please, don't tell them you saw me." Her voice trembled, soft but clear. Eli blinked, unsure what to say. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. She shook her head. "No time. They're looking for me." The next second, a loud roar filled the sky. A patrol ship flew overhead, shining white searchlights across the desert. The woman's eyes widened. She pressed herself against the rocks. Eli turned off his torch and crouched beside her, holding his breath as the beam of light passed right over them. The ship hovered for a moment, then moved away toward the east. The ground vibrated until it was gone. The alien girl exhaled shakily. Eli could see her hands trembling. "Who's looking for you?" he asked again. Her gaze darted toward the stars. "Hunters. From my world. I escaped," Eli frowned. "Escape from what?" But before she could answer, her bracelet flickered brighter and she gasped in pain. The glowing mark pulsed wildly. Eli reached out without thinking and caught her arm, trying to steady her. The light faded slowly, leaving only a faint glow. "Easy," he said softly. "You're hurt." She looked up at him with wide eyes, studying his face as if humans were something she had only heard of in stories. "You're one of them," she whispered. "A human." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, last one here, I think." For a moment, silence stretched between them. The cold wind blew dust around their feet. Then, without warning, she turned and ran into the darkness, disappearing behind the rocks. Eli stood frozen, not sure if he should follow. His scanner beeped again. The blue signal was still nearby. That meant she hadn't gone far. He sighed, shaking his head. Great, another mystery in the middle of nowhere. He walked back toward his workshop, but his mind kept replaying her frightened eyes, her trembling hands, that strange, glowing mark. It was unlike any tech he had ever seen. Inside his workshop, the hum of old machines filled the silence. He sat down, trying to focus on the blinking lights of his console, but his thoughts were still on her. "Hunters," she had said. "Escaped. Escaped from what?" He opened the scanner again. The blue signal blinked once more, stronger this time, closer. His eyes widened. He turned toward the back door. The faint sound of footsteps came from the shadows. Eli grabbed his torch and pointed it toward the noise. The beam cut through the dim light, landing on the figure standing near his old storage shelves. It was her, the same alien girl. Her hair was wet from the mist, her clothes torn even more, and her eyes filled with fear and exhaustion. Before he could speak, she whispered, I didn't know where else to go." Eli looked at her in disbelief. "You're hiding here?" "In my workshop." She nodded slowly, then sank to her knees. "If they find me, they'll kill us both." Eli stared at her glowing mark again, realizing something strange. His scanner's signal came directly from it. Whatever she was, whoever was hunting her, this was far bigger than he thought. Outside, thunder rolled across the desert, and the lights in the workshop flickered. Eli looked out at the storm building in the sky, then back at her trembling form. He didn't know why, but he felt it. His quiet, empty life was over. Something dangerous, something powerful, had just entered it. And it all began with one frightened alien girl hiding in the shadows of his lonely outpost. The storm raged outside the metal walls of Eli's workshop. The wind howled like a living thing, shaking the windows, and red dust blew against the door in endless waves. Inside, under the dim yellow light, the alien girl sat near the corner, hugging her knees, trembling. Eli placed a metal cup of warm water beside her. "Drink," he said softly. "You'll freeze out there." She looked up at him with those silver eyes, wide and uncertain. Her glowing wrist mark flickered faintly, like a heartbeat of light. "You shouldn't help me," she whispered. "They'll track me here." "Who's they?" he asked, his voice calm but curious. "The Royal Guards," she said slowly, as if afraid to speak the words. "They belong to my father's world. They hunt anything different." Eli leaned against the table, crossing his arms. "Different like you?" She nodded, lowering her head. "My name is Lyra," she said softly. "I was born with a mark that should not exist." She touched the faintly glowing symbol on her wrist. "They said I was cursed. My blood carries something." "Human," Eli froze. The word human hit him like a stone. "Wait, you mean—" Lyra nodded again, not looking at him. "Long ago, a human came to our world. Some say he fell from the sky. He was kind, brave. My grandmother loved him." Her voice trembled. "And because of that love, I was born." Eli stared at her in shock. He didn't know if it was madness or truth, but the sadness in her eyes was real. "So they're hunting you because you're part human?" he asked quietly. She gave a small nod. "They say I am a shame to the noble house of Tesserain. My father rules with fear. He ordered me taken to a lab to erase the impurity." Eli's stomach twisted. "Erase?" Her eyes filled with tears. "They tried to change my blood. The mark glowed too bright. I escaped." She looked up at him, desperate. "Please, I don't want to go back." Eli sighed and rubbed his neck. "Well, Lyra, you picked the wrong planet to hide on. This place isn't exactly safe either." "I had no choice," she whispered. "My tracker led me here. It said a human still lived in this sector." Eli looked down at her wrist, realizing what she meant. Her mark wasn't just decoration. It was some kind of ancient bio-device. "Your tracker. It brought you to me?" "Yes," she said. "The moment it felt your presence, it guided me here. Like it remembered something." Eli didn't like the sound of that. He turned to his control panel and checked the radar. What he saw made his blood run cold. 3 ships entering orbit. He zoomed in. The signals were sharp triangular crafts, alien royal patrols. "Damn it," he muttered. "They found you." Lyra stood up, her hands shaking. "They'll scan every building. If they detect my mark—" Eli didn't let her finish. He grabbed a thick metal sheet and placed it over the window. "Then we'll make sure they don't detect anything." He switched off all outside lights and powered down the main generator. Only emergency lamps glowed red in the darkness. Lyra looked at him in confusion. "Why are you helping me?" Eli shrugged. "Guess I'm tired of watching bullies win." Outside, searchlights swept across the sand. The sound of engines thundered in the sky. The workshop trembled slightly. Lyra pressed her back against the wall, clutching her wrist to hide the light. "They're close," she whispered. Eli moved quietly to the window and peeked out. A patrol ship hovered just above the ridge, scanning with a bright beam of white light. He held his breath as the light passed over the workshop roof. Seconds felt like hours. Finally, the beam moved away. The sound faded. Eli exhaled slowly. "They didn't see us." Lyra sank to her knees, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. "If they catch me, they'll destroy me." Eli crouched beside her. "Not while you're under my roof," he said firmly. For the first time, a small, uncertain smile touched her lips. The glow on her wrist softened, warm and calm. But deep down, Eli knew this wasn't over. The scanners could return, and if what she said was true, that her blood carried human DNA, then she was more than just a fugitive. She was living proof that humanity had touched another royal world long ago. And that frightened powerful people. As the storm outside began to quiet, Lyra's head slowly rested against the wall. Exhaustion overtook her. Eli watched her sleep for a long time, his mind full of questions he couldn't answer. He whispered to himself, "What have I gotten myself into?" Then he noticed the strange glow from his console. His scanner showed her mark pulsing in rhythm with his heart rate. Somehow their signals were connected. Eli stepped back, eyes wide. Whatever Lyra was, she wasn't just part human. She was linked to something old, powerful and forgotten. And now that power was inside his home. Morning came slowly on the desert world. A soft orange glow filled the sky, and thin mist rose from the red sands. Eli Cross sat outside his workshop, drinking from a tin cup and staring at the horizon. The night had been long, filled with thunder, fear, and too many questions. Inside the workshop, the alien girl, Lyra, slept on an old cot covered with a blanket. Her glowing wrist mark had faded to a soft blue, steady and peaceful. Eli still couldn't understand how she had ended up here, or how her strange tracker had led her straight to him. He sighed and muttered, "What are you, really?" When she finally woke, the first thing she did was look for the sky. She stepped outside barefoot, her silver skin catching the morning light. She smiled weakly at the sun. "It's warm," she said softly. "Your star feels gentle." Eli watched her carefully. "You act like you've never seen sunlight before." "I haven't," she said. "My world is cold. The clouds never move. We live under metal domes. Everything there is silver and quiet." Eli frowned. "Sounds like a prison." Lyra looked down. It was. She walked toward his tools, curiously touching each one. The wrenches, the old plasma cutter, the tiny drones lying in pieces. "You fix things," she said. "Machines listen to you." "Yeah, that's my job," he said with a faint smile. "Someone's got to keep this junk running." Lyra tilted her head. "We have machines too, but they don't listen to us. They control us." Her words made Eli pause. He looked at her glowing wrist again. "You mean that mark? It's some kind of control chip." Lyra nodded slowly. "The mark can track my pulse, my thoughts, even my fear. They made it to control me. But when I met you, something changed. The signal broke." Eli blinked. "Broke?" "Yes," she said, looking at him intently. "It stopped sending data. My father's guards can't see me anymore. It's like your presence hides me." Eli tried to make sense of it. Maybe her tracker wasn't built for human frequency. Maybe it jammed near him. Whatever the reason, she was safe for now, but something inside him felt uneasy. He turned back to his console and checked his system logs. That's when he saw it. A strange code signal appearing again and again through the night. It wasn't from his radar or his tools. It was coming from her mark. He zoomed in on the data. The signal formed a pattern, and then words, "identity match found." Eli's heart pounded. He opened the file and the screen displayed two images, one of Lyra, and one old photo, grainy black and white, of a human man wearing a deep space uniform from 200 years ago. The caption read, "Captain Elias Cross, missing." 27 Eli froze. That was his last name, his ancestor, the man everyone said vanished beyond the Orion Belt. Lyra saw the screen and gasped. "That's him. That's the one from the stories. The human who fell from the stars. My grandmother said he saved her world once." Eli turned slowly toward her. "You're telling me my ancestor went to your world?" "Yes," she said softly. "He changed everything. He taught my people kindness. But when the rulers feared his influence, they erased his name. Only my family remembered." Eli leaned back, stunned. "So you're telling me you're part human because of him? Because of my family?" Lyra nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "I didn't come here by chance, Eli. The tracker brought me to his bloodline. To you." Eli stared at the glowing mark again. It wasn't just a tracker, it was a message. A call that had waited generations to find him, but before he could speak, a sharp alarm rang out from his console. He rushed over, scanning the radar. 3 ships again, closer this time. Lyra's face went pale. "They've found me." Eli cursed under his breath. "How? You said the signal was broken." She shook her head. "They must be using scent drones. They can trace my DNA." He looked around the workshop, thinking fast. "We can't outrun ships, but maybe we can outsmart them." He grabbed a barrel of old machine oil and poured it over the sand outside, covering their footprints. Then he activated a decoy signal, a fake beacon transmitting false coordinates toward the canyon. When the radar showed the patrol ships turning toward the wrong direction, Eli smiled grimly. "Let's hope they're dumber than they look." Lyra stared at him with awe. "You risk your life for me, why?" Eli paused, then looked her in the eyes. "Because my ancestor probably would have done the same. And maybe I want to see what he saw. Lyra stepped closer, her voice quiet but trembling. He saw hope, she said. And maybe he left a piece of it in me. The two stood in silence as the sky darkened again, the storm returning like a warning. Eli felt it deep inside. This was no longer about just helping her. It was about finishing what his bloodline had started centuries ago. And somewhere above them, in the blackness of space, something ancient was watching, waiting for them to remember what humanity once meant. The storm outside had turned the desert into a sea of dust and wind. Lightning flashed across the blood-red sky, shaking the air with thunder. Inside the metal workshop, Eli Cross stood staring at the old holographic photo of Captain Elias Cross, his ancestor, the lost human explorer who had disappeared 2 centuries ago. Now Eli understood. Lyra wasn't just some frightened fugitive. She was living proof that Captain Cross had survived and left something behind. Lyra stood nearby, her silver hair glowing faintly in the dim light. She watched the storm through the small window, her face calm but sad. He was a hero, she said softly. My grandmother told me stories of the human who fell from the sky. They said his eyes were full of fire and his heart never gave up. Eli couldn't help but smile faintly. Sounds like he was stubborn just like me. She turned to him. He changed our world. He stopped the wars between the clans. He built schools. But the High Council feared his ideas, human ideas. They believed humans made people dream too much. Eli frowned. Dream too much? That's a strange thing to fear, Lyra nodded. On my world, dreaming means rebellion. The rulers want silence, not hope. When they found out my grandmother's child carried human blood, they erased our name from every record. My father became their puppet king to survive. I was locked away to be corrected. Eli clenched his fists. That's not correction. That's cruelty. Lyra touched her glowing wrist. They wanted to remove the human code inside me. The mark, it's their experiment. But it reacted to your DNA. Eli leaned forward.
You mean this thing connects us?
Yes, she said. When it sensed you, it changed. It protected me. Eli rubbed the back of his neck, confused but curious. So, your people created something they can't control anymore. Exactly, she whispered. And they'll kill both of us to hide that mistake. Thunder shook the ground again. Eli walked toward the window and stared into the storm. He knew she was right. The patrol ships would come back soon. They needed a plan, and fast. He turned to her. There's an old human ship buried out in the dunes. My ancestor's freighter. I found it years ago when I first came here. It's half dead, but maybe we can fix it. Lyra's eyes widened. His ship? You found it? Yeah, Eli said. Never told anyone. Figured it was bad luck. She shook her head. No, it's destiny. They worked through the night, packing supplies, repairing tools, and sealing the workshop's doors. Lyra helped him load power cells, her small hands surprisingly steady. As Eli checked the last generator, she approached quietly. Eli, she said, voice low, do you know why they fear humans? He looked at her, puzzled. Because we don't follow orders? She smiled faintly. Because you love. Because you choose kindness even when it hurts. On my world, that's seen as weakness. Eli laughed softly. Then I guess I'm guilty. Lyra's expression turned serious. The human who fell from the stars. He loved my grandmother. That's why I exist. But love between species is forbidden. They called me a monster born of impurity. Eli's jaw tightened. You're not a monster, Lyra. You're proof we can be better. For a long moment, silence filled the room. The only sound was the wind howling outside and the faint hum of machines. Lyra stepped closer, her voice trembling. You don't understand, Eli. My blood can do something. Powerful. What do you mean? He asked. She hesitated, then held out her glowing wrist. This mark isn't just a tracker. It's a key to an ancient weapon hidden deep in the royal vaults. A weapon built using my ancestors' DNA. Your ancestors' technology. They want to use me to activate it. Eli stared at her in shock. So that's why they're hunting you. Not because of who you are, but what you can unlock. Lyra nodded, her eyes shining with fear. If they succeed, they'll control every colony in this galaxy. But if we reach the ship first, we can destroy the weapon's coordinates. Eli took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. He wasn't just helping her anymore. He was standing between peace and war. He looked at her with determination. Then we'll fix that old ship. We'll fly straight into the stars and we'll end this. She blinked, surprised by his certainty. You would do that? For me, Eli met her eyes. Not just for you. For the future. For what he started. What we have to finish. Lightning flashed again, lighting both their faces for a brief, beautiful second. In that moment, Lyra's expression softened. You really are his blood, she whispered. The fire never left. As the storm began to fade, Eli powered up the transport drone outside, preparing for their journey. He didn't know what waited beyond the dunes, or how dangerous it would become. But one thing was certain. The truth about humans and aliens, buried for centuries, was about to rise again. And this time, the universe would see what humanity truly stood for. The night sky boiled with thunder. Red lightning crawled across the clouds, lighting up the endless desert below. The storm had grown worse, strong enough to tear metal panels from the ground. But Eli Cross didn't stop working. He tightened the final bolt on the crawler engine, his hands trembling from exhaustion. Beside him, Lyra held the lantern steady. Her glowing wrist mark lit up the inside of the metal shelter like a second light. Will it fly? She asked, her voice barely rising over the roaring wind. Eli gave a tired grin. It'll move, flying. We'll find out soon enough. They had spent the last 2 days in secret, digging through the dunes to uncover the buried ship, the Starling, an ancient human freighter long thought lost. Its hull was half-eaten by rust, but its bones were strong. And deep inside, when Eli connected the power core, the engines hummed like they remembered him. Lyra stepped closer to the control panel, her silver hair dancing in the static air. She placed her glowing hand on the console. Instantly, the ship's lights came alive one by one. Eli blinked in shock. How did you— It knows your blood, she said softly. And mine. The storm outside howled louder. Sand blew against the hull like 1,000 knives. In the distance, Eli saw bright flashes in the sky, searchlights. Patrols, he muttered. They're back. Lyra's eyes widened. We have to go now! Eli ran to the controls. Hold on to something. The engine screamed as he pushed the power levers forward. The Starling groaned, shaking off the centuries of dust around it. The old freighter rose slowly, its thrusters cutting through the storm's fury. For a moment, Eli thought they might make it out unseen. Then a blue beam hit the side of their hull. The ship lurched violently, alarms blaring. Lyra stumbled but grabbed the railing before she fell. They've locked weapons on us. Eli cursed and pulled the flight stick. Not if I can help it! He dove the ship straight into the heart of the storm. Outside, lightning flashed all around them. Clouds of red dust twisted like living monsters. The patrol ships followed, firing plasma bolts that sliced through the darkness. Eli, Lyra shouted. The hull won't hold. Then we'll make them blind. He yelled back. He flipped a switch, overloading the rear thrusters. Flames burst behind them, mixing with the storm's lightning. The sensors of the pursuing ships went haywire, their targeting systems jammed by the chaos. One ship spun out of control and exploded in a burst of white fire. Lyra watched the storm light up the night. You're insane, she said, half laughing, half crying. Probably, Eli grinned, but it's working. The ship burst through a wall of red lightning, emerging into the clear sky above the storm. For the first time, Lyra saw the stars again, bright, endless, beautiful. Her lips parted in awe. So many stars. Eli glanced at her, breathless. First time seeing space. She nodded slowly, tears shining in her eyes. It feels like freedom. He smiled, but the smile faded as his sensors beeped again. Don't get too comfortable, he said. We've got another problem. On the radar, a massive warship appeared, dark and sleek, a royal cruiser. Its symbol glowed on the side, the sigil of House Tisserand. Lyra's blood ran cold. That's my father's flagship. Eli gripped the controls tighter. Then he's faster than I thought. The cruiser's voice boomed over the comms, cold and commanding. Unknown vessel, this is Emperor Kale of Tisserand. You are harboring a fugitive. Power down and surrender or be destroyed. Eli muted the signal. Yeah, not happening, Lyra trembled. He'll kill us both. His ship has 10 cannons, we have none. Eli looked at her wrist mark, still glowing faintly. Unless your magic mark has a secret weapon mode I don't know about. She hesitated, then whispered, Maybe it does. Before he could ask, she placed her hand on the ship's console again. The mark flared white-hot, flooding the room with light. The old freighter system surged to life. Engines, shields, everything humming with new power. The ship suddenly moved faster, smoother, like it had woken from a long sleep. Eli stared in disbelief. Lyra, what did you do? I didn't do it, she said through tears. We did, the ship. It's reacting to both of us. It remembers your ancestor. Behind them, the cruiser fired another blast. The Starling spun, dodging the plasma fire. Eli pushed the engines to their limit. The storm below still roared like a giant mouth waiting to swallow them whole. Hold on, he shouted, diving the ship back into the lightning clouds. The cruiser followed, but its scanners struggled in the electric chaos. Thunder and plasma bursts filled the air, shaking both ships. When the cruiser fired again, the blast grazed the Starling's wing. Sparks flew, alarms screamed, and smoke filled the cabin. Eli coughed, trying to keep control. We're hit! Lyra crawled toward him, holding onto the panel. Eli, your arm. Blood ran down his sleeve where shrapnel had cut him. But he didn't stop. We're almost clear, he said through gritted teeth. She pressed her glowing hand to his wound. The light spread and the bleeding slowed instantly. Don't die, she whispered. Not now. Eli met her eyes, breathless. Not planning to. With one final push, the Starling burst out of the storm's edge, leaving the cruiser lost in the chaos behind them. They flew into open space, free but damaged. Fleeting energy. Eli leaned back exhausted. Lyra sat beside him, still holding his arm. Outside, the stars stretched on forever. He looked at her and said softly, Next time, remind me not to fly through a lightning storm. Lyra smiled weakly. Next time, I'll remind you we lived through one. For the first time, Eli laughed. Not because they were safe, but because, for once, he wasn't alone in the universe. Space was quiet after the storm. Too quiet. The Starling drifted through the black void, its engines cracked and sparking from the chase. Eli Cross sat in the pilot seat, his right arm wrapped in a bandage Lyra had made from torn fabric. His face was pale but calm. Lyra sat beside him, her hands resting on the console. The glowing mark on her wrist had dimmed, but every now and then it flickered like a heartbeat. The ship is tired, she whispered, almost like she could feel its pain. Eli smiled weakly. You and the ship, both half alive, half miracle. She looked at him, eyes soft. You're bleeding again, he shrugged. I've had worse. Once got my leg stuck in a mining shaft for 12 hours. Lyra didn't smile. Her gaze turned toward the stars ahead. You shouldn't have come with me, Eli. My father won't stop. He'll hunt you across every system. Eli leaned back, staring at the stars. Then he can try. The ship suddenly shuddered. A red alarm lit up on the console. Gravity lock detected. Eli's eyes widened. They've got us. A massive shadow fell over the Starling. The Emperor's warship loomed ahead, its black hull shining like polished glass. Energy nets wrapped around Eli's freighter, pulling it in. The engine screamed, but it was useless. Within minutes, they were dragged into the ship's docking bay. Eli grabbed his blaster, but Lyra stopped him. Don't fight them, she said. He won't kill you. Not yet. Not yet? That's comforting. The door hissed open. Tall guards in silver armor stormed in, pointing energy spears at them. One shouted, Drop your weapon. Eli slowly raised his hands. Lyra stepped forward, her voice calm. Take me to him. Leave him out of this. The guards hesitated but nodded. Two of them grabbed Eli roughly, pushing him forward. They walked down a long, cold hallway lit by white lights that hurt the eyes. At the end stood a tall figure in a dark cloak, the Emperor Kale, Lyra's father. His presence filled the air like a storm that never ended. Daughter, he said coldly. So the runaway returns. Lyra bowed her head, trembling. Father, please, silence, Kyle snapped. His eyes turned toward Eli. And you, the human. He stepped closer, studying him with disgust and curiosity. I never believed your kind would crawl back into my galaxy. Eli met his gaze. Guess we're full of surprises. The Emperor circled him like a predator. You risked your life for her, why? Because she needed help, Eli said. Because she's alive. Isn't that reason enough? Kale laughed softly, a cruel, empty sound. Humans always say that. You act as if compassion is a weapon. He turned to Lyra. You shame me. You carry human blood, the blood of weakness. But perhaps it still has use. Lyra's voice cracked. You want my mark, don't you? You want the weapon, Kale smirked. Clever girl. The mark on your wrist is the key to the Celestial Forge. The one thing that can rewrite DNA itself. With it, I will make a new race, pure, obedient, unbreakable. Eli's jaw tightened. You'll destroy everything. That's not creation, that's control. Kale looked at him with calm hate. Humans built control first. You made the stars burn for profit. Don't lecture me about mercy. He raised his hand, and 2 guards dragged Lyra toward the chamber door. She struggled, crying out, "Father, please, don't hurt him. He's not your enemy." Cale ignored her and turned back to Eli. "I will offer you something, human. Give her up, walk away. I'll let you live a long, quiet life." Eli laughed bitterly. "You think I care about living quietly?" Cale's eyes narrowed. "Then die loudly." The guards raised their weapons. Lyra screamed, breaking free for a moment. She threw herself between them and Eli. "Stop," she shouted. "I'll go." "Just don't hurt him." Cale froze. His expression shifted. Something almost human flickered in his eyes, then vanished. "So the hybrid has feelings," he said softly. Pathetic, he motioned to his guards. "Take her to the core chamber. Prepare the transfer." Eli tried to move, but a guard hit him across the back, knocking him down. The last thing he saw before the door closed was Lyra turning her head, her eyes meeting his, filled with silent fear and something deeper. He coughed and whispered her name, Lyra. When the door sealed, darkness fell around him. He lay on the cold floor, pain spreading through his ribs, but his mind was clear. He wasn't going to let it end like this. Somewhere deep in the warship, Lyra was being dragged toward the machine her father wanted to activate, and Eli, broken, cornered, alone, began to smile through the pain. Because even now he was still human, and humans don't give up. The hum of the Emperor's warship echoed like a heartbeat through the metal halls. Deep inside, in a glowing chamber filled with strange machinery, Lyra stood trapped inside a circle of light. Cables from the ceiling reached down like snakes, connecting to the mark on her wrist. Her silver hair floated in the energy field, her eyes wide with fear and pain. Her father, Emperor Cale, stood before her, his cloak rippling from the energy's wind. "You were born with a purpose," he said coldly. "Now fulfill it." Lyra shook her head weakly. "That purpose is not yours to choose." Kyle raised his hand. The light grew brighter. The floor trembled. The machine began to hum louder, like it was breathing. "The Celestial Forge will obey your DNA," he said. "Through you I will shape perfection." But before he could activate the final command, a loud explosion tore through the walls. Metal shards flew everywhere. The lights flickered. Smoke filled the chamber. From the haze, a figure stumbled in, bruised, bleeding, but alive. Eli Cross. He had used the maintenance shafts to reach the chamber, bypassing the guards and locking the blast doors behind him. His uniform was torn, one arm still wrapped in bandages, but his eyes burned like fire. Cale turned in disbelief. Impossible. Eli raised a plasma pistol, sparks flying from its cracked barrel. "Sorry to interrupt your family therapy," he said, panting. "But you're done playing God." Cale's guards charged, but Eli fired before they reached him. The pistol screamed, energy bolts tearing through the air. One guard fell, another's weapon exploded. The rest hesitated. Eli grabbed a steel rod from the floor and swung it into the control panel, smashing the circuits. The lights around Lyra flickered. The cables retracted with a hiss. "Eli!" Lyra shouted. "Don't, the energy will—" "Already too late," he yelled back. The machines sparked and screamed. The glow on Lyra's wrist pulsed wildly, reacting to the broken system. Energy burst from the mark, wrapping around her like ribbons of light. She cried out, her body trembling, and Eli rushed forward, catching her as she fell into his arms. Cale roared in fury. "You fool! You'll destroy everything!" Eli looked up at him, holding Lyra close. "No," he said quietly. "You already did." The energy from Lyra's mark exploded outward. The force knocked Cale backward, shattering his armor. The chamber walls cracked, lights bursting one after another. Through the chaos, Eli shielded Lyra with his body, refusing to let go. When the light faded, everything was still. Smoke filled the air and the sound of distant alarms echoed. Lyra opened her eyes slowly. The mark on her wrist now glowed a calm white instead of blue. "It's over?" she whispered. Eli looked around. The machines were destroyed, the control panels melted. Cale lay motionless near the far wall, his cloak torn, his crown dim. "Yeah, Eli said softly. It's over. Lyra sat up weakly, her eyes full of tears. You came back for me. He smiled faintly. Of course I did. What kind of man would I be if I didn't? She reached out and touched his cheek, her fingers trembling. You were hurt. You could have died. Eli shrugged even as blood trickled from his lip. Worth it. For a moment, the two just sat there surrounded by the wreckage of the Emperor's pride. The silence between them was heavy, but it felt peaceful. Then Eli asked quietly, Lyra, what do you want now? What do you want from me? Her silver cheeks flushed a pale blue. She hesitated, her eyes lowering. She took a deep breath, voice trembling. All my life, people told me what I should be. A tool, a symbol, a mistake. But you... She looked at him again, tears glistening. You treated me like a person. Eli said nothing, just listened. Lyra smiled shyly through her tears. What I want is simple. I want to stay beside you, to see what the stars look like when they're not just cages. Eli blinked, stunned into silence. Then a quiet laugh escaped him. That's a dangerous wish, Lyra. I'm no prince, just a broken mechanic. She leaned closer, resting her head against his shoulder. Then I'll be the light that helps you see again. He looked down at her, his voice soft. You really are something. And you, she whispered, are the reason I believe humans still exist. Outside, alarms continued to echo through the halls. The Emperor's ship was dying, its systems failing. Eli helped Lyra stand. Together they stumbled toward the exit, holding each other for balance. When they reached the hangar bay, the starling still waited, battered but alive. Eli smiled weakly. She's tougher than she looks, just like you. Lyra giggled softly. Then she's yours. They climbed aboard and sealed the hatch. Engines roared to life, blue light bursting from the thrusters. As the warship behind them broke apart, the starling rose into the stars, leaving the wreckage and the past behind. Eli sat in the pilot seat, looking at the endless expanse ahead. Lyra sat beside him, her hand slipping gently into his. He turned to her once more, voice quiet, almost teasing. So, just to be clear, what do you want from me now? Her face turned bright blue, her eyes glowing softly. She smiled, heart full of warmth and shy laughter. I just want to stay, she said again, voice trembling but certain. By your side. Eli's smile deepened. Outside the window, the galaxy stretched open like a promise. Two souls, one human, one alien, fled into the stars together, leaving behind a broken empire and carrying something far more powerful than any weapon. Hope.